discuss on the topic of GetX in Flutter. To give us a small demo about GetX. Okay, so GetX is a package which is provided by the GetX team, and this uh, package is basically created for us to implement the state management and then the dependency injections and route management quickly and easily into a Flutter application. GetX is basically a very extra light and powerful solution for implementing the state management in Flutter. So now let me start with the state management. Uh, First, the state management. I know that everyone know about state management. I think so. Basically, we have to in Flutter. The state management is basically. Natively, we use set state to update our data in our widgets, right? In the stateful widgets, mostly in the stateful widgets. We only use stateful widget to implement state management with set state. And every time we call set state, the build method will build again and again every time we call set state, right? So, in order to prevent this situation, we will go with third-party set state management tools. So there are other tools that we will use, like there are tools like Block Provider and Mobex, and of course GetX. So now we are going to look into GetX state management. So basically, what are we going to do now is we will implement the same. Uh, the startup project which Flutter provides is basically a counter app, right? So when we tap on the bottom plus button, the count will increase. So what we're going to do now is we're going to implement the same function with the state management, GetX state management. Okay. Now let's remove these comments so that you can understand. As you can see the code itself, this is the home page stateful widget. They created a stateful widget, and then they're calling a function with a set state, and every time when we call this function, the counter will increase. The variable will increment every time when we call this function, right? So what happen what is happening here is whenever we tap this button, whenever we call this function, this build method is building again and again. So in order to prevent this prevent this method that we are implementing state management, right? So we are going to implement this function with GetX. So in order to start, we have to first we have to integrate the Get package and Get plugin into your calculator YAML. So okay. Now this will add our plugin to our Flutter application. As you can see, the Get is added now. So the first and foremost thing that what we have to do is when we are using this package, uh, the first thing that we have to do is we have to replace our material app with the get material app provided by the GetX package. This will get material app. This will manage our the state management or basically the context. There are other methods that GetX provides, which is basically we can use the routes and other things like dialogues, pop-ups, and snack bars. Everything mostly the native. function which are provided by Flutter, we have to use context for each and everything, right? But for when we use get package, we can use this, we can implement those same things without using context. So which will be managed by this get material. So now I replaced our material app with get material app, and our app is running. So whenever I press this plus button, the count will increase. Now we are going to implement the same thing with GetX statement management. Uh, well, to implement this state management, there are a few things that we have to do, and there are different ways in implementing state management in Get package. So let me show you those ways. So before that, let's create a new file. Let's make it just controller. Let me name it controller dot, and so let's name our class as counter. Okay. So let's create a variable counter 0, which will hold the value, and which will keep track of a counter, and then the function to implement the counter. Implement. Now we created our object, which will have the necessary functions to implement the counter. Now, what we have to do is there is something called dependency injection. Dependency injection is basically this is our dependency. We need to inject this dependency to our application. So, if you want to use this, I mean, if you want to get this counter, and if you want to access this object in our in our application in our widget, what we usually do is we'll create a counter. I mean, counter object, right? Counter like this, and then we'll use this counter value everywhere we want, right? And counter dot increment function. We can access the increment function from this way. So the problem is, if we want to access this object each and every page, we have to create this object each and every time. So this is what we want to prevent from happening, right? So what happen what is happening is, um, every time we create this object, this object is created in our memory every time. So we have to prevent this from happening. So what we're going to do is, we'll remove this, and then we are going to create a new file called pandas.dot, which will call this class as bind extends bindings. Bindings is this is from get package. Okay, so we have to override a method here. That method is dependencies. What dependencies? Here we have to inject our dependency. So how we are going to inject our dependency? So the method that GetX package provides is get.put. Get.put is basically where we have to pass our object into this method. That's all. So basically, what happens is, when we call this bind, it will this particular line code will put our object into our get material, and it will create an instance in the memory. So whenever we want, we can access this counter from our memory, and then we can use it again and again. It is basically we are getting a copy of this instance. So this way we will provide the counter. I mean this object from creating every time, and then it will reduce our memory usage also. So right now we created this instance, but how we are going to use it? So before that, we have to bind this class to our get material. So how are we going to do this? There are two different ways. One is it is basically depend on the user, I mean the developer. So let's say this particular counter is going to be used in our whole application means then we can uh, just add this binder here. I mean initial binding, just call the bind method. That's all. This will bind our dependencies to the getArray map from the initial code. Or else if you want to call this bind for particular screen means you can use the navigation, I mean get navigation. Through the navigation code you can able to pass a binding. So that way you can able to pass specific binding to specific screens. Okay. Now I have passed this initial binding here and then the binder is here. And here there are two type of ways, I mean there are three types. uh, One is get output, I mean injecting the dependencies. There are three types in injecting the dependencies. So it is basically get output, and another one is get dot lazy put, and there is another thing called get dot put async. Put async is nothing but the object which we are passing. I mean, it's not that we have to pass object. We can also pass a function here. This function should be an async function. Okay, so we don't need to do that right now. We are just going to focus on get output and get at lazy boot. Both are same in the sense get output will put our counter in directly into the memory, but lazy put what it will do is it does not put directly. It does not put this object directly to the memory. Instead, it puts a builder. So it will create the memory only when we are accessing the counter. Until then, it won't create this object in the memory. But get output will create the memory once we initialize it. So it would be great if we use get.lazy. Right now we are going to use get.lazy. Okay. So because we just want this counter to run when we want to access this. I mean, we just want to create this counter in the memory when we are going to access the data from this counter. Now, let's create a getter so that we can get the counter value. We created the created the binding, and then we put our objects into this, and then we initialized our binding, right? So, okay, okay then. Now, how are we going to access this binder in our application? So that is what we're going to do. Before that, we'll create a new file, so that create another home page. Let's call it home page. If we get to this afterwards. Now, the first way is, let's say we just want to update this text, right? We do in this particular screen in our, I mean, what we want to do is we just want to increase this counter value so that, and then we just want to pass our function to this particular function. Okay, so basically this particular widget only going to get updated, not the whole widget, right? So in this particular case, we can go with a certain method. Okay, so let me tell you that. Okay, now we have controller, right? What we have to do is, in order to make this variable observable, we just have to put dot OBS. We have to import it package OBS. This will make our integer reactive. In this way, we can able to track the value. Just This is basically the way that I'm going to, the method that I'm going to use is, which is pretty similar to provider. I think you guys that who use provider may understand this. So what in provider, what we usually do is when we want to update a certain value, we'll call notify listeners, right? So here there is a case called the same thing called update. But in order to use update, we have to make this counter a GetX controller, same as provider. What we want in provider, what we'll do is we'll extend our class as change notifier. Here we have to use GetX controller. In this way, we'll be able to update our value. Notify our listeners about this uh, value change. Now I make the counter observable, and I have extend this object into counter, and then I'm updating this value every time I'm calling this function. It will update our counter. Now we have to access this in our widget, right? So what are we going to do now is we are currently this stateful widget, but we don't want this to be a stateful widget, right? So we are going to remove this. So we'll just make this a stateless widget. Stateless widget. And this, and now increment counter. So right now what we have to do is we have to call this function, right? So in order to access this, you know that we already binded our object with the get material app, right? So we have to access the variable, right? So what will first thing is, let's say, okay, let's just this function, and then right now what we're going to do, what we want to do is we just want to make this widget observable, right? So we just want to update this widget. So in this case, if we want to update the whole widget, let's say for example we are going to work on a cart page. Adding if it is a cart page, there are a lot of things that we want to do there, right? Like adding the cart, updating the cart, and then calculating the values. So everything is the whole page depend on a certain object that we created to control this process, right? So for that case, we have to do a different method. But here, we just want to update a single widget in a whole screen. For this case, we can go with a set. So we just want to what we want to do is we just change it. We just grab this widget with OBX. This will want a parameter as a builder. We just need to pass a function, maybe arrow function, and it will accept a widget. That's all. Right now, we are calling we wrapped our widget in OBX. This will make our widget observable, and now we just want to get the value from the object. For that we just want I already told you about get.lazyput. Right now, in order to get this counter, there is another method to access this object, which is simple. Just create a counter counter here. Now new method, build method, counter equal to get dot find. This will find our object. In order to find this correct object, we have to pass a generic type as counter here. Now, this will search for our object in the dependencies which is created initially when we are binding the application. So this get dot find only works after initiating. I mean, after putting our counter, we have to call this method before calling get dot find. Okay, so keep that in mind. So right now we are finding this method counter. We just need to update this value. I mean, call the value. So counter dot counter. Counter. Because it is an integer, so I'm changing it to string. And here I want to update this function, right? So it's counter dot increment. That's all. So what I did is I changed this into stateless widget, and then uh, I created a binding, and then I injected my dependency, the counter object. I created a controller with extends GetX controller and a function which will implement this function update, and then I made the variable. I mean the variable that we want to observe as observable with the keyword OBS, and I think that's all. Let's try running this application. Let's restart it. As you can see, it is working. When I click the button, the value is increases. So we are not using stateless stateful widget or not set state, and we are able to implement the state manager. So now let's talk about, I mean, what we have to do if we want to, I mean, use use the object for the whole widget, I mean the whole screen for this whole build method. There is one way called get builder. So what we have to do is, we don't need this counter here. We don't have to create the, I mean, we don't have to find the dependency which we have injected. Just remove this. So you have to wrap this for with the widget that you want to update. Okay, so in my case, I'm just going to wrap this with the whole scaffold widget. So just call get builder. The builder accept the controller. So the controller is basically our object. So I'll name my object as counter. I need to return a folder. Now, here we need to pass another thing. We need to initialize our builder with our counter, the object that we are going to use. And then we have to specify our counter type. That's it. Now we can able to use this counter value inside our application as same as before. Right now we don't have to use OBX. So we can remove this, and even in the controller you don't have to make your variable as .obs. You just have to leave the variable as it is, and you have to call update. And now if I run it again, as you can see, it is working as same as always. So these are the two types that you can implement your state management according to your need. Okay. There are few other things that we can do with our GetX package. GetX package. If you're going to extend your controller, uh, it will provide you certain methods to override this particular object. Namely, we can call on init, on ready, on state. These three, I think these three types will be of use for you. So on init, and on ready, on close. So basically, what happens is, what will happen is when you are calling your binder, I mean when you are creating this instance counter. Uh, as you can see, if I open the log panel, you can able to see the instance counter is has been created and the instance counter has been initialized. So when you are binding your object, the counter instance will be created. When you are finding your counter, I mean using your counter, the instance counter will be initialized. Okay. So let's take a scenario that you have to call an API when you are running, I mean opening your application. You have to initially call those APIs in order to get some certain data. For example, you want to get the user data from an API. So let me create a dummy value. So let's call it a future void. I'm going to call it get user API. And we are just going to create a mock future dot delayed the duration sequence to the function that I'm going to pass is let's create a variable string user. Now the user is empty. Once you initialize this function, you have to call. You have to and we're going to assign this user a new user, and you are going to update it so that the user may notify. I mean that widget will notify that the user has changed with the new value. Now what you have to do is you want just have to call this method in the init function. So basically what will happen is this init function will run when your object will allocated to your memory. Okay. This onReady function will run when it is initialized. Can you understand the difference between init and ready, right? So onInit will run when the counter is created, and onReady will run when the counter is initialized. This is basic, basic explanation on how it works. And the on clause will be when your object is deleted from your memory, it will run before deleting it from your memory. So you can use this for, I mean, if you're creating any controllers inside this object, means you can use it to dispose those controllers. So it will basically this contours will basically in use will be usable for disposing the controllers and declaring some values and everything, which is basically uh, the developer. I mean, it depends on the developer. So we don't need this on close. So on ready, well, there is one example we can say for on ready. For example, we are, I mean, let's say this is your, I mean, first time opening your application. So we are getting the user after building the widget. Basically, it will run after building the widget on ready, but on init will run before building the widget, which is basically like init state. But on ready only runs after building your widget in the application. I mean, in Flutter. So we can use this already for a scenario like if that you want I mean you want the user to show how the app will going to work, right? There are some steps, demo, something like that, right? There are some UIs, how you, I mean the information regarding your app. So you can use this, you can use this function to call those methods to show the user, right? So okay, let me comment it. Let me put a print statement to show that it is initialized. Hold on a minute. Now, so this print statement will say this list updated. So the this counter has been created, counter has been initialized. And after that, after 2 seconds, as you can see, the get user is the API is running. And the get user API, we create the mod API, so it is running. And we get the output as on in it. So in this case, the user value is updated. Now, if you want to call this user, on the main page, let's create another text. Now, if I restart the application, as you can see, you can able to see the new user. So this is how we implement state management in GetX and the ways and the features that GetX provide for us to implement the state management as easily as possible, right? So basically, we will require this on init on ready is very usable in developing a large application where you need to in- initialize some APIs or functions before building the app. So this will make I mean this will make things easier as possible. So next thing is, as you can see, we are passing the get builder here. So what I'm going to do now is, uh, in the home page, this is another page. Let's make a sample UI body sample child. I'm just going to put a text button here. Text. The child will be a text. Now here, instead of incrementing, what I'm going to do now is, let's talk about the navigation that provided by, I mean, provided by Flutter. So, sorry, GetX. Usually, the native code, I mean the native navigation provided by Flutter is the code will be like this navigator dot of context, and then we have to pass what are we going to do with the navigator. I mean, are we going to a new screen, or are we copying a new screen from the stack, or replacing a new screen? There are a lot of types, right? So, but in every case we have to pass the context to the navigator. So the problem is, let's say there is something. Let's say in your object you are updating a new user and you want to navigate your user to a new screen in the function itself. So in this case, if you want to use the navigator, I mean the default, the native code that provided by Flutter, you have to pass navigator of context. So in order to pass the context, you have to pass a context. I mean context argument too in order to access the context. But in this case, get user. I mean the get user runs before building the object, right? I mean building the widget itself. So we can't able to access the context. So this is a case which we have to take care of, right? So GetX also provides a method to implement navigation without using context. So we just have to call get dot to, and we just have to pass a function. I mean a builder and the name of the screen that you want to go. That's all. So this way we are not passing any context here. So we can use the same code in our controller too. It will give the same result. Right? So right now what we're going to do is we're just going to use this here, and I'm just going to access this text user, I mean the user in the home page. So in that case I'm going to wrap this with get builder. Let me tell you one thing for get builder. As you can see, I already used this get builder already once, right, in the previous screen. So what I can do is I just have to call this thing, and then I need to pass the counter, and the counter object. So as you can see, I already passed the get builder, and I already initialized this counter variable and counter object in the previous screen itself, right? This screen is the I mean parent to this home page, right? So basically, the home page is the child of this my home page widget, right? So what we can do is, so once you initialize the counter and you are going to use this get builder again, means you don't have to use the, I mean you don't have to initialize this object again, because the object is already created. So you don't have to initialize this object again. You can use without initializing it. You just have to, you just need to specify the type in get builder. This will take care of everything. I mean the get package will take care of everything in the back. You just have to call this, the counter, and then just leave it as it is, counter dot user dot user. So if I run this, hit press plus button, as you can see I'm in the new page and I'm able to access the new user. So this is one type of method, and also as you can see, before we have tried get dot find, right? After injecting the object, we have, in order to access the object, we have to initialize a get dot find method. In that case also, you just need to create the get dot find once. You don't have to use it in the child again and again. You just need to pass the object into your home page. And I already said the binding, there are two ways passing the binding, right? If you want to use the binding in for your whole app, you can pass the binding in the initial binding, or you just want to use the binding in a specific certain home page. Means let's say this home page only I need to have a specific binding. Means there is a option called binding. We just need to pass the bind here. That's all. In this way, this bind will only works for this home page and the child of this home page. Okay. So this is one way. This is another way that we can pass the bindings. So and okay. So actually, this is the basic implementation in how we can handle state management in GetX. But we just how do I say? We just touched only a tip of the iceberg because the GetX package is very huge. There are a lot of features that it gives us to make our development as easy as possible. Not just the state management. You already see the navigation, right? Sorry, the dependency injection, state management, and the navigator too. I mean, get that too, and you can also, if you want, you can see the already function, right? Let me give you one other thing. So get dot to have a dialog put without using context. You can use the dialog without using context using get also. Let's say if you want to, let's say this is a function. I mean, new user has been logged in, so you want to after building the widget. I mean, after calling the API, once the app is built, you want to show the user that the new user has been logged in. So you can use this get a dialog here itself and then just call a dialog widget, or let's say a dialog title text new user, just call that user. Okay, and let's I call my name as new user. Now, okay, now let's see what I'm running the application. Okay, I think there's something. Oh, I got it. Because it is this is asynchronous function. It will take some time to get the user value. So right now it does not have any value, but as you can see the pop-up is showing, right? That is what we want, right? Basically, so we can basically use this on ready function. After building the widget, we can implement whatever the function that we want to uh, I mean what we want to implement, we can do it, right? So we can use this, we can make use of this override methods provided by GetX controller and GetX package to implement the function based on our needs. So it's not just get.dialog, we can also use get.snackbar is, I mean, there is also show overlay. So snackbar is also there. You can uh, implement snack. You can show snack bar without using context. The main focus, I mean, the main highlight in GetX package is uh, the, I mean, the headache which caused by the context is removed. For snack bars, overlays, uh, dialogues, navigations, and even media query. We can access the media query without using context in our object itself. Just call media query dot media query dot size dot height, like this. We can able to call the media query. We can able to access the media query wherever we want without using context. This is the highlight of this GetX package. If you, So this is the, basic introduction of GetX package. If you want to know more about GetX, just as you can see, there are a lot of things that we can do with get navigation, snack bars, dialogues, bottom sheets with no context, state management, and then dependency injection by calling the instance only once. And then you can use shared preferences also using get storage, but you have to have another, there is another plugin called get storage. You have to integrate, you have to add that plugin to your perfect YAML in order to use this value and use this function for a feature. And you can use internationalization. You can localize your app with the get package also. It provides certain ways to implement uh, the localization in a very easy way. And you can able to change your theme wherever you want. You just need to call get.change theme, and then you just need to pass whatever the light or top theme, and then you can call this function wherever you want, and it will implement this function. And then some validations, email validation. You can use get your case to validate email. And if you go down, it will have a lot of context, and there are a lot of things that what the get provides. So basically there are a lot of things in the get package. Not just that, if you go to the GetX site, they have another few more packages from the GetX, get storage, get server, to implement sockets and HTTP and CLI, media utilities, and so on. So as you can see, there is the here is the get storage. You can use this package and plugin to implement uh, the the shared preference. Local storage without get get feature. So main thing is, as you can see, GetX is a state manager, navigation manager, dependency manager. I think I have. Let me show you some navigation. Few navigation functions. As you can see, there are other navigations also. Remove route, get that remove route, which will remove one route from your stack, and then get that until which will return until the specific route is true. And then get dot off is there. Get dot, you can also pass named routes also. Get dot named is there, and you can use get dot arguments to get the arguments from your route. For example, let's say this is a home page, the metadata. Here you are passing the binding, right? Yeah, you can also pass some arguments like title, and you can access this from here, like string arguments equal to get or arguments like this, and you can able to use this arguments wherever you want inside this application. Even accessing the arguments, you need a context, right? So basically, I already said it. The main highlight of this GetX package is basically the implementing lot of features without context, right? So it will be very helpful in implementing a large application where we want to implement some dialects and everything in our object itself. So this is the main highlight of this package, and we can also implement the state management as easily as possible in compared to block and provider. Okay, I think there are a lot of things. As you can see, we can use get platform to check the platform. Which platform that we are working, the device. the device details info, which will you can use this to make your application responsive. So there are get.head, get.with, which is basically equivalent to media query dot of context dot size dot add, basically which is equivalent to media query. The same we saw before. You can able to access the context also from your widget. So I think this will be one thing which will be more useful to you. So there are a lot of things that I already said. I can't cover everything in this certain presentation. So I just covered some basics. If you want, you can just visit this website so that you can able to know more about this package, and then you can make use of this in your application so that you can make the build as fast as possible and easy as possible, and also powerful. Okay, thank you everyone for attending this presentation. I hope that it will be a fruitful presentation that we will be able to know some information regarding GetX, and thank